And renewable energy, I suppose, right now is a coined phrase on the African continent and something that we really need to tap into. But unfortunately, if you look at energy penetration and electrification of the continent, we're still at very low levels. There's a lot of room to grow. And, one does wonder what kind of role renewable energy can play on the African continent, one that is sustainable. What is your view on this?
Actually, I think the entire future of the development of energy in Africa has to be renewable. It's clear that Africa has huge potential that is still untapped, and with the current events going on in terms of the availability of petroleum products, climate change, renewable energy becomes the appropriate mechanism to achieve sustainable development of any kind.
Okay, so Andrew, I know that you look specifically into various industries, including textile, dairy, brewing, hospitality, and so forth. What about cogeneration? Do you think that that is one key aspect, and do you think that it's something that corporates right now are looking at?
Yes, cogeneration becomes a very attractive option, especially for those type of industries that use agricultural raw material and produce a certain amount of waste. But then also because of the sustainability of such things as trees and forests are not as available as they used to be, we need to adapt more creative ways of using the same resource over and over, and cogeneration gives such an avenue.
Looking at some of the projects in the pipeline, I know that you're focusing on with regards to anaerobic fermentation, and that's going to generate biogas. Let's look at the first project, which is around 3 megawatt power project. You're looking at industrial waste. You're using that, which is quite interesting, which is creating the biogas that I speak of. Tell us about the phase of the project and the strength and the capacity going forward, the one that you actually want to see go in a few years' time.
Actually, biogas or waste in general has a huge untapped capacity for generating particularly electricity, but also for generating steam for industrial processes. So the idea is that a lot of the municipal councils or cities produce a huge amount of waste. If you take Nairobi, for example, the estimated quantity of recoverable energy is in the range of 300 megawatts. That would be approximately 1/5 of Kenya's entire electricity production. That could come from waste. So putting it into context, a more sustainable or a more smart way to go about it would be to convert that waste and to use it directly for production. So that's the kind of flavor that these kind of projects that are being developed all over are trying to adapt. So instead of it being a problem, instead of it being, in fact, even the terminology waste changes to resource material.
Okay, when you look at the capex spend that is required for this, and I know we're looking at industrial waste, we're looking at feedstock, and we're also looking at agro-processing as well. So there's quite a bit of waste, as you mentioned, that shouldn't even be termed as waste because it is convertible into energy. Capex spend overall and the return on investment. Give us an indication of the difference. I know the return on investment, you're looking at around 18%. Capex spend, relatively modest in this space.
Yes, these projects are quite attractive because they, unlike other sources of energy, they do not require very heavy capex. In fact, in terms of comparison, you could compare, for example, a biogas operated plant in terms of the capex required to a thermal plant running on fossil fuels, and that makes them very attractive, considering that you do not incur an operating cost in future related to the material required to produce the energy. So if you factor the two and say that for investment per megawatt, you're probably investing the same, but in one case you're vulnerable to international crude prices, and in the other case you're using a waste that has a fixed value, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that makes them really attractive from a CapEx point of view as well.
Okay, so Andrew, with regards to this energy generation, and then this is the big point of contention, is it then fed through into the overall grid, or would you say that it will just then power the surroundings, the company, the schools, the textile industry, obviously depending on who's actually investing in this project? Do you think that it needs to be then fed through into the overall grid, or do you think it's just going to operate as independently, as independent power producers, so to speak?
I draw a comparison with the mobile telecommunications. Approximately 15 to 20 years ago, Kenya was, in terms of telecommunication, creating a grid, going house to house, business to business, connecting through this grid, this communication grid. Come mobile technology, and within a period of 8 years, more than half the entire population is connected. The same thing can be done from a renewable energy point of view, rather than, or in addition to the existing grid, in places where specific types of renewable energy are possible, it is actually possible to create autonomous mini-grids or systems, or even use the energy directly. Let's take, for example, geothermal energy. If a geothermal energy plant supplies electricity to the grid that loses approximately 20% of the energy before it gets to the cities, to the industrial areas, that 20%, if the industries were based inside the geothermal, that would translate to direct increment in terms of production. So there is an opportunity to rethink the entire basis of production and use renewable sources as efficiently as possible without having to incur distribution losses and increase productivity. So that is the opportunity.
Thank you so very much, Andrew, or should I say Kwaheri. Thank you so much for joining us.